Hello guys, today I have this video from this Christian Oxford professor who debates this big atheist, and the way it unfolds is truly amazing and it will surprise you. Let's jump into the video and watch.
And what you wrote is this: the whole argument turns on the familiar question, who made God? Which most thinking people discover for themselves. A designer God cannot be used to explain organized complexity, because any God capable of designing anything would have to be complex enough to demand the same kind of explanation in his own right. God presents an infinite regress from which he cannot help us to escape. This argument, as I shall show in the next chapter, demonstrates that God, though not technically disprovable, is very, very improbable indeed.
John mentioned in the answer to the previous question the idea of the physical constants being finely tuned. And it's quite true that many scientists, many physicists maintain that the physical constants, the half dozen or so numbers that physicists have to simply assume in order to derive the rest of their understanding, just have to be assumed. You can't provide a rationale for why those numbers are there. And physicists have calculated that if any of these numbers was a little bit different, the universe as we know it wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be here. The universe would perhaps have fizzled out in the first yoctosecond, and so we wouldn't be here, or other things would have gone wrong. It's tempting, once again, to import the easy, facile idea of a designer and to say that the designer twiddled the knobs of the universe at the Big Bang and got them exactly right, got the gravitational constant right, got the strong force right, the weak force right, and so on. But it seems to me to be manifestly obvious that that is a futile kind of explanation because, as the quotation says, who designed the designer? You have explained precisely nothing, because instead of just saying, oh, well, the knobs were tuned to the right values anyway, you say, oh, there was a God who knew how to tune the knobs to the right values.
Dr. Lennox.
The anthropic principle, as you stated, Richard, I think is a complete truism. Of course, we have to be on such and such a kind of planet of the kind that we could appear on. That does not answer the question how we came to exist on it. And I fear I have to disagree with you on Darwinism. Darwinism does not explain life. It may explain certain things about what happens when you've got life. But evolution assumes the existence of a mutating replicator. It does not explain how that replicator came to exist in the first place. Now, that's a major discussion. I want to address the who designed the designer question, because it's the old schoolboy question, who created God? I'm actually very surprised to find it as a central argument in your book, because it assumes that God is created. And I'm not surprised, therefore, that you call the book The God Delusion, because created gods are by definition a delusion. Now, I know, and I ought to explain, that Richard doesn't like people who say to him that they don't believe in the God he doesn't believe in. But I think that this is possibly touching a sore spot, because you leave yourself wide open to the charge. After all, you are arguing that God is a delusion. And in order to weigh your argument, I said that...
You know, if nothing ever existed, ladies and gentlemen, nothing would exist even now, you know? I mean, something has to be eternal, right? Right? You know? I mean, to even suggest that God was created, you know, reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of who truly God is, to be honest, you know? I mean, by definition, God is the uncaused. Yeah, literally, God is the uncaused, you know, eternal being who has always existed. Clearly. Yeah, he's not bound by time, no, space or even matter. No. He's actually the one who created those. See? Anyways, let's watch the video further.
It is you who's arguing that God is a delusion.
Oh, sorry. All right.
And in order to weigh that argument, I need to know what you mean by God. And if you say, if there is a God, you have to ask who created God, that means that you're reduced to thinking about created gods. Well, none of us believe in created gods, Jews, Muslims, or Christians. And I think that argument then is entirely beside the point, and perhaps you ought to put it on your shelf marked celestial teapots where it belongs. The God who created the universe, ladies and gentlemen, was not created. He is eternal. This is the fundamental distinction between God and the universe. It came to exist, he did not. And this is precisely the point the Christian apostle John makes at the beginning of his gospel. In the beginning was the Word. The Word already was. All things came to be by him. God is uncreated. The universe was created by him. Now, I don't know whether Richard has difficulty with the concept of the uncreated. I don't know, and I'd love to know whether he believes as a materialist that matter and energy and the laws of nature were always there, because if they were, he does believe in something eternal. So perhaps the difficulty lies in believing in an eternal person. But I want to probe deeper into this, because he suggested that introducing God would mean an end of science. God is no explanation, since by definition God is more complex than the thing you are explaining. Now, this, he states, is the central argument of his book. I would not have expected an argument like this from a scientist, because explanations in science themselves are usually in terms of increasing complexity. An apple falling is a simple event. The explanation in terms of Newton's law of gravitation is already stretching the minds of many people, but its explanation in terms of a warp in space-time is stretching the minds of the cleverest. Simplicity isn't the only criterion of truth. Let me give you an example. Suppose you're an archaeologist, and I'm exploring a cave with you, and you're a Chinese expert, and on this cave you see two scratches. And you say, human intelligence, and I say, pardon, they're just two scratches. And you say, but those are the Chinese character run, which means a human being. But I say, look, Richard, that's no explanation at all. You're postulating something as complex as a human brain to explain two scratches. That means that your explanation is more complex than the thing you're explaining. That's no explanation at all. Now, it seems to me that's exactly what you're saying in your book. The reason we can deduce something as sophisticated as human intelligence from two scratches on a cave wall is because they have a semiotic dimension. They carry meaning. And that fascinates me as a mathematician, because the reductionist is committed to deducing things that carry meaning, and I would include the DNA molecule among them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what the Oxford professor is saying, because if God had a beginning, ladies and gentlemen, he wouldn't be God. He wouldn't be God. You'd simply be another created being, just like you and me, Yeah, pretty much, subject to the same limitations as everything else in the universe, I mean, the very nature of God, demands that he is self-existent, self-existent, meaning that he depends on nothing else for his existence. That, by just, the very definition of what God means, ought to represent. We can use this, we can have the same sentence of God and created. No, they cannot be in the same sentence. It's not possible. Otherwise, he's not a God. He's a fellow, creature or a human being, So God is in his own class. That's what I'm saying here. Well, let's watch the video further.
We can deduce something as sophisticated as human intelligence from two scratches on a cave wall is because they have a semiotic dimension. They carry meaning. And that fascinates me as a mathematician, because the reductionist is committed to deducing things that carry meaning, and I would include the DNA molecule among them, is committed to explaining those in terms of the basic materials. But as was pointed out a long time ago by a Nobel Prize winner, Roger Sperry, the meaning of the message is not going to be found in the physics and chemistry of the paper and ink. And it fascinated me too to see that you approved in your book of the physicists looking for a TOE, a theory of everything. But that's a theory where the buck stops. Incidentally, there is no hope for a TOE, as Stephen Hawking has said in 2004, on the basis of Gödel's mathematics and its application to physicists. So I'm interested that you were prepared, as I understand it, to agree that a TOE was a good thing in physics. It's perhaps you like a TOE, a toe, provided there's no God attached to it.
Wow, what a video. Well, ladies and gentlemen, to to really address this, the question of who created God is categorically, it's an error, because it assumes that God is like everything else in the universe, which He is not. He is not. Things that were created have a beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Things that were created have a beginning. However, God is fundamentally different. God is fundamentally different. He exists outside of time, space, and matter. He exists in His own realm. That's what I'm saying. He exists outside of time. He doesn't have a beginning. But I know that many skeptics, they struggle with this idea, because everything in human experience has a cause or a beginning. So sometimes to explain these concepts, I pretty know that it's a big foot. It's a big thing. For many skeptics to understand and to grasp this one. But ladies and gentlemen, God is the source of all creation. He is the creator. If you read the Bible, in Revelations, from 1 verse 8, it says, I am the Alpha and I'm the Omega, the beginning and the end. Pretty much meaning that I am eternal. I am eternal. I'm the sovereign ruler of all things. You see? And those are the titles that only God identifies with. You never hear a human being saying, I'm the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. I am the creator. No, it's not. You never hear any human being or any historical figure say those things. But only God, He's the one who identifies with those. You see? Because to really say, is the Alpha, God, it really means that God is the ultimate source of all creation. For example, Genesis 1 verse 1 declares, in the beginning God created, the heavens and the earth. This affirms that before anything else came into being, God already existed. You see? He already existed, and also as the Omega, God is also the culmination of all things. Ladies and gentlemen, history is not random or meaningless. No, it is moving forward to an ultimate fulfillment in Him, in God. You see? Yeah, God will bring history to its conclusion. God will bring history to its conclusion. You see? Yeah. Apparently everything will return to Him, and He will reign forever in perfect righteousness. That's according to the Bible. You see? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Also tell me what you think. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Looking forward to seeing you again next time. It's bye-bye for now.